Let's cultivate our motivation. And again, appreciate this precious human life and the opportunity it affords us to study and practice. And really think of how transient it is, that we are closer to death today than we were yesterday. And we're much closer to death today than we were a year ago. And to ask ourselves, if death were to happen right now, are we prepared for it? Do we know what to do to guide our own mind at the time of death? And if the answer is no, then we know that we have some work in front of us, and that it's good to get going on that work as soon as we can, because we have no certainty as to when death will come and how long we have remaining in our life. And so it's particularly important to release the self-centered attitude and to make our minds pliant and receptive to higher thoughts, and to imbue them with love and compassion and the altruistic intention, seeking enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, as a way of making our lives meaningful and purposeful, so that they not only lead to a good rebirth, but also liberation and enlightenment, and in the process make this life more peaceful as well. So let's generate that motivation now. Are we not online yet? Okay, so hold on. Technical difficulties are in the process of getting remedied. Gee, things are so much more together in India. They have very good high-tech stuff. Okay, are we on? Okay. So it's good to be back here with you after a hiatus of 5 weeks, which I think you got all reviewed up. So that you know everything from the first sections, and you've meditated on it all repeatedly and have some sense of where we're going, right? Yeah, I heard. And it's very good. I mean, and when you have to lead the review yourself, then you really learn it, don't you? Yeah. You know, when you just sit and listen, it's very passive. But when you have to prepare it and lead it, then it makes you think and put different ideas together and clarify your understanding. Okay, so we were in the middle of discussing our dear beloved self-centered attitude. Okay, so I don't suppose you've given it up in the last 5 weeks, haven't you? Yeah, you've tried? Have you really tried? Or do we just kind of give lip service to trying, but when the self-centered attitude is raging, we just bow down to it and salute it and follow it all the time? Okay, so we're talking about the one line that says, banish the one to blame for everything. Okay, so the one to blame for everything is the self-centered mind. Okay, but just developing that understanding is hard because we think our self-centered mind is our best friend, is the one who's going to take care of us, is the one looking after us. We don't see our self-centered mind as the one to blame for all of our problems, do we? Yeah. We see the mind cherishing others as the one to blame for all of our problems. Because my goodness, I can't do what I want when I have to take care of others. Yeah, oh, that causes me so much misery. When the schedule is the way other people like it, and then I have to do it the way they like it, oh, I suffer so much. Well, that's the way we think, isn't it? You know, we don't think, oh, you know, my self-centered thought is my big enemy causing me misery. We think, oh, the schedule is the misery. Okay? So you see, you know, just this teaching is so applicable because generally we have things pretty upside down and inside out and backwards, you know. And what isn't the cause of suffering we think is, and what is the cause of suffering we think is our best friend. And so therefore it's no wonder we've been roaming in samsara for so long, because we've got it all mixed up. Yeah. But then when people point it out to us, we don't like it at all. Yeah. What do you mean I'm self-centered? I am not. I am cherishing others the way I see fit. Mind your own business. Thank you very much. Okay. And another day in samsara unfolds. Just all the time, this self-centered thought. Now, and then we wonder, you know, why am I not getting anywhere in my practice? Why is my mind so afflicted by one, you know, affliction, one delusion after the other one, after the other one? Why am I so restless? Why am I so discontent? You know, when we ask ourselves those questions, you know, do we ever do a serious investigation of where our misery comes from and what the source of our restlessness is? Now, at lunchtime, that's what Geshe-la was saying. You know, he was saying, really investigate your experience. So you're restless, you're troubled, you're dissatisfied. Where does that come from? So instead of just going on automatic and thinking, oh, well, of course, it comes from outside me, and it comes from other sentient beings, and it comes from not getting what I want, you know, investigate more deeply and really see, is that truly where it comes from? Or does it come from a thought within our own mind? No? In which case, if that thought within our own mind is the source of the restlessness and the trouble, the dissatisfaction and the insecurity and the anxiety, then we better do something about that self-centered mind. Yeah, because until now we've been trying to change the environment, and the problem is we take our self-centered mind with us all the time. It's like a dog that has fleas, you know, that's sitting in one place, scratch, 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 scratch. Oh, these darn fleas, you know, they're really bugging me. So the dog gets up and walks over to another place so that he's no longer has fleas. That's what he's thinking, you know, if I move to this other place, the fleas will stay here, I won't bring them with me. But what happens, he gets over to the other place and he's still scratching because all the, you know, the fleas came with him. So it's the same thing with us, you know. We say, oh, if only I had, if only I went to, if only I were, if only I did, if only, you know, thinking that that going to there or doing that would be like the dog leaving the fleas behind. And the fleas just come with us. Our self-centered mind comes right with us. And then we're so surprised we get to the new place. Why am I unhappy and dissatisfied here? That was coming from where I was before. Yeah, I left that. I left those fleas. How come it's happening again? What a peculiar, unusual thing. No? I mean, this is the same thing with relationships, isn't it? Yeah, you have one relationship and say, okay, done with that one. Yeah, I'm going to get a new husband, new wife, new boyfriend, new girlfriend, new cat, new dog, new goldfish, you know, and this one's going to be better. And then, you know, still the same problem, isn't it? You know, or at least very similar problems. Now, why is that? Now, I ditched the old one. The new one's supposed to be better. How come I still feel insecure in this relationship too? Because you're carrying the fleas, that's why. So, you know, we just don't realize this at all. Okay, so our author is going to continue to tell us the faults of the self-centered attitude. So remember, it's very important as we think about these to realize that the self-centered attitude is not who we are. Okay, so we're not criticizing ourselves. We're finding the faults of the self-centered attitude and recognizing it as our enemy. So we're not hating ourselves and feeling guilty and beating up on ourselves for being so selfish. Okay, don't do that, because that's just more self-centered attitude. Okay. So he says, we should never fool ourselves about the fact that happiness arises from virtue and suffering arises from negativity. Okay. So we know that, we mouth that all the time. But when it comes down to living it, we think happiness arises from negativity and unhappiness arises from virtue. Oh, if I'm virtuous, I can't do this and I can't do that. I'm in a straitjacket. These precepts are just too much, you know. Whereas, oh, if I can do anything I want, I can go to the bar, I can do the pub, I can go internet, I can do everything. Then I have freedom, real, true happiness. And then we do it, and same old, same old, same old, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, we should never fool ourselves about the fact that happiness arises from virtue and suffering arises from evil. This is assured. It has been stated by the transcendent subduer, that is the Buddha. It's written in text by learned masters elaborating his thought, and it can be heard in the glorious holy masters' songs of spiritual realization. Everyone desires happiness and wishes for not even the slightest misery, yet when others encourage us in the direction of wholesome conduct, we fail to heed their words. We engage in proscribed and natural misdeeds like water pouring downhill and act reluctantly to restrain them. Here within us is an evil holder of wrong views whose promises are completely contradicted by the way he behaves. Do we have that within us? Our mouth says one thing, you know, our mouth says, oh, this is wrong view, this is right view, and our behavior says the exact opposite, you know. Our mind says this is the cause of suffering, this is the cause of happiness, and our behavior says, no, this is the cause of suffering, that's the cause of happiness. Completely the opposite. Okay? So, yet when others encourage us in the direction of wholesome conduct, we fail to heed their words. Yeah, so the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have been trying since beginningless time to give us good advice, and we just ignore it. Yeah, or we do the usual trip and we go, oh yes, yes, very true, thank you very much, I'll do that, and then we go out the door and do what we want. true, isn't it? Yeah. So this is kind of our problem. We get good advice and then we don't listen to it. Or even worse yet, we get angry. Yeah. Oh, Buddha's putting me in prison. Buddha said I can't go drinking. This is too narrow and restricted. This is unnatural behavior in the 20th century. You know. Yeah. And then we make a whole court case about how the Buddha, you know, just doesn't know what he's talking about. And, I mean, the Buddha just doesn't know that hallucinogenic drugs have all this liberating potential of the mind to get you beyond your narrow-minded afflictions. Yeah? Buddha just didn't get it. You know, this is what we think. That we get angry. So prudish. Buddha's a big prude. Yeah. Yeah. And all the things under, you know, unwise sexual behavior. Oh, I don't like that one. You know, everything about not criticizing people. Oh, that's not right. Yeah. So we debate the Buddha, but over the wrong things. Yeah. We do lots of debate, but over the wrong topics. Okay? So the idea is that it's not to force ourselves to believe what the Buddha said, but to do, you know, real investigation and see, you know, when I do the 10 destructive actions, what's the result in my life? You know, be very pragmatic and very honest, you know. I go drinking and drugging, and then what happens? Yeah, what happens? Yeah, usually trouble, isn't it? Yeah, or at the best, some temporary happiness in which we've, you know, entrenched our attachment to samsara more deeply. Yeah. So that's the best thing that can happen, and the worst thing is, you know, some really bad stuff. But we just don't get it. Hmm? Yeah, neglect of children is a big one, yeah, due to drinking and drugging. So the thing to really look out for, you know, is look in our own experience and look in the lives of the people that we see around us. And, you know, what happens when you engage in those kind of actions? Do they create happiness here and now? Do they create happiness in the future? Do they create suffering here and now? Do they create suffering in the future? And, you know, do some analysis about this and investigation. You know, so that we come to our own understanding, our own wisdom. Because if we spend that time and come to our own wisdom about it, then even other people come in and say, oh, you know, you're so prudish, not overly as Buddha prude, but you're a prude. You know, then our minds won't be troubled, our minds won't be swayed. You know, we won't start thinking, oh yeah, you know, that guy's right, what I'm doing is really unnatural. You know, because we'll have investigated it before and we'll have a certain certainty that comes from seeing our own experience very clearly. So even the turkeys agree as they go about, you know, doing the big prance, you know. I mean, the turkeys in the springtime are really something, aren't they? You know? I mean, the male turkeys, and just, I was watching one out my window, and it's like, who are you trying to impress? You know, and then I saw there's a female turkey, you know, like across the, yeah, and she's like ignoring the guy. But he doesn't care, you know, he's all like this. And that's exactly what we look like when we show off, isn't it? You know, it's like we have that big long red thing like the turkeys have. We puff our chest out and twitch our feathers and walk around like this. We're so full of ourselves. The same thing, you know. So next time you find yourself getting a little puffed up and arrogant, really visualize one of those turkeys and say, that's what I look like. That's what I look like. Yeah, might work to calm our minds down, huh? From beginningless time, we have been circling through cyclic existence because of the 84,000 disturbing emotions. This also applies to the numerous troubles and pains we have experienced until today. Yet, despite having closed many doors to the achievement of benefit and pleasure, we still lack the vision to see even the slightest defect in any of this. Here within us is a clay image with blind eyes. Okay, so we've had all these 84 afflictions, we've had so many troubles and everything, and yet, despite having closed the door to getting anywhere, you know, in terms of overcoming them, we still haven't learned from the experience. Yeah. And so we still lack the vision to see even the slightest defect in samsara. Yeah. So even though we've capitulated to the disturbing emotions time after time after time and given up the chance for liberation, we still don't see any fault in what we've done. Yeah, I mean, that's the depth of the ignorance. You know, it's like somebody who gets drunk night after night and doesn't see the fault of what they're doing to themselves, but thinks that it's fun. Okay? So even though they keep losing things one by one, they lose the marriage, lose the kids, lose the job, etc., they don't get it. So it's the same way, you know, with the mind that is so full of self-centeredness and attachment to samsara. So we're like a clay image with blind eyes. Pretty potent image, isn't it? Yeah, thinking of yourself just kind of like stone, not getting it, and blind. In brief, if our actions of body, speech, and mind are done under the influence of a self-centered attitude, the source of all misery and conflict, they will bring upon us all the trouble of external foes and internal disturbances. So if we act influenced by the self-centered mind, we bring upon our own selves all the problems of having, you know, external people who don't like us and who are trying to undermine us and who criticize us and who talk bad behind our back. And we also bring about all of our own inner disturbances of worry and anxiety and grief and insecurity and so on and so forth. Okay? Because you can see whenever any of those emotions arise in the mind, that underneath them is the self-centered mind, isn't it? You know? I mean, when you're anxious, self-centered mind is right there, isn't it? Okay? When you're insecure, isn't that all about me? When we're afraid, isn't that something's going to happen to me? Huh? So when we have all these kinds of emotions, you can see how right there under the surface is this amazing attachment to the self. Mm-hmm. And yet we don't want to give it up. Crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. Yeah. And when you see it in that light, then you just say, then you really understand that when Buddha said we were ignorant, he's really right. You know, sometimes we can, just wakes us up. It's like, oh boy, I am really ignorant. Mm-hmm. And so this is, you know, when we talk about not wasting our life, this is what we're talking about, not just seeing these things, but trying to take some action. Because if we just see them and then keep on doing things the same old way, then we never really get anywhere. Yeah, so the idea is to see them and then to try and reform these habits, these emotional habits. Holding ourselves dear is like the blue-headed bird of ill omen. Therefore, now that we understand that we are to give up neglecting others, we should hold selfishness as our principal enemy and set it apart as a foe. Okay? So we're going to start switching this around and cherishing others instead of cherishing ourselves, and hold the self-centered mind as the principal enemy and hold it apart from ourself. So again, don't confuse the conventional self with the self-centered mind. They're two different things. And don't hate yourself for being selfish. As the exalted Shantideva has said, those earlier times when you overcame me, he's talking to the self-centered thought, those earlier times when you overcame me are past. Now I see you in another light, and wherever you go, I shall destroy your arrogance. Having sold you to others, I shall not be upset at having offered you into their service. If I should be negligent and not give you to other sentient beings, you will certainly deliver me to the guardians of hell. If that should take place, my misery will be interminable. Now recalling my grudges against you, I shall destroy your concern for your own good. Okay, so in the previous times our self-centeredness overcame us. Now we're seeing that it's really the enemy, and we're making a strong determination that wherever our self-centeredness is manifest, we're going to destroy its arrogance. We're going to cut it down. And we're going to sell that self-centered attitude to others. Okay? So that self-centered attitude that plagues us, that makes us miserable, we're going to give that to others in the sense that we're exchanging self and others. Okay? So when we say, I want happiness, now I refers to others. Okay? So we're going to sell our self-centered attitude to others. And so I shall not be upset at having offered you into their service, because we're offering our self-centered attitude up as the servant of others, which is going to be something that demolishes the self-centered attitude. If we're negligent and we don't give up the self-centered attitude and make it the slave of others, then the self-centered attitudes, with the ring through our nose, it's going to pull us and deliver us straight to the guardians of hell, because it will make us do one after another negative action. And if that takes place, then we're really going to be in a pit of misery. If we think we have it bad now, a future life with experiencing the result of the karma we create under self-centeredness is going to be much worse than this. So, recalling our grudges against the self-centered thought, we're going to destroy it. Okay? And then our author says we should keep this in mind. Besides, due to the strength of our acquaintance with a self-centered attitude over beginningless time, if we hear the squealing of rats in a house, we are frightened of them nibbling our nose. Okay? So here, you hear some rats in the house. So we don't just say, oh, there's rats in the house, they're doing their own thing. All of a sudden, it has to be related to me. And so we create worst case scenario. What are these rats going to do? Well, they're going to come and chew away my nose. Okay? So the self-centered mind takes, some sound or something, and then creates this whole horror story about it. Okay? So you hear the rats squealing, and instantly, I'm going to be without a nose. They're going to eat my nose. You think your nose is going to taste that good? Okay. Hearing a clap of thunder, we worry that our heads will be struck by lightning. Again, exaggerated, isn't it? You know, there's the sound of thunder. Instantly, we relate it to, what's going to happen to me? It's going to hit me, you know, right in the middle of my head, and, you know, I'm going to get cracked open like Humpty Dumpty, and that's going to be the end. Yeah. Now, of course, some people do get hit by lightning, but what's the chance of it happening? Not very great. But we all revert to this self-centered thing of, you know, what's going to happen to me? Okay. And coming to a haunted place, we are afraid. So even if something's rumored to be haunted, our mind definitely makes it haunted, and we become afraid. So you can look at it as like what happened just this last week with the swine flu. Okay? What happened? Now, oh, there's an outbreak of swine flu in Mexico. How many people died? 19? Something like that? Not so many, you know, or at least in the early days. You know, so many, just a few people died, but I'm going to get it. Yeah? And so I had one person say to me while I was in India, you know, you should think of you know, where you want to be in the next week, because they may close all the international borders and you may not be able to leave India. Yeah? And then someone's saying, oh, you know, we should stock up on all of our food, because the you know, it's like the plague is going to go by and we won't be able to go out. And you know, I saw some people getting really afraid. Yeah. Okay. So you know, okay, you know, there's the swine flu, and some people have died from it, but more people have recovered. And how many people in the course of one day have the flu anyway? Yeah, when you think about it, many people have the flu every day, normal, regular flu. But you know, we hear this from the media and then we get really terrified. Yeah, so it was a big topic of discussion where I was, and you know, and then it was quite interesting. Just in Singapore, people weren't so worried, but I got to Taipei, I was transiting there, many people were wearing masks. You know, they haven't had a single case yet, but many people were wearing masks. Then I came back to the US, and in the Seattle airport, I hardly saw anybody wearing a mask. Yeah. So it's just interesting. Of course, you know, in Taiwan, they had SARS last year, so it was much more real for them. So they tightened up, and the same thing in Singapore. Yeah. I mean, when I came into Singapore, it was just when it was very, very new, and they were already scanning people's body temperatures. I was so afraid I was going to have a hot flash, and they were going to quarantine me. But thank goodness I got through there with that. You know, otherwise it would have been very difficult. I couldn't have given those talks. So, you know, but it's this thing of, you know, something happens and our mind makes it into some huge thing that is definitely going to, you know, destroy my life. So we have a hard time when there's some kind of danger, really assessing what the danger is and coming up with an appropriate response. You know, we very easily go to an extreme about all sorts of stuff. You know, when I first got to Singapore, actually it wasn't until about 2/3 of the way during my trip that I started actually needing an alarm clock to wake up. Usually when my body's in sync, I needed the alarm clock to wake up. But for, you know, like over 2 weeks, about 3 weeks, I was waking up without the alarm clock, having slept however little I slept, just because my body wasn't in sync, you know. And I could have gone, oh no, I'm not sleeping enough, you know. And then I just remember, maybe it was you, saying that, you know, as we age, we don't need so much sleep. So I just said, I feel okay, so if I'm not sleeping as much, that's fine, then I have more time to do other things. Yeah. On the other hand, I could have gone, and then who knows what. Yeah. So, but if you feel fine, no sense to worry. But what I'm getting at is how our mind makes big deals about things. Okay? Yeah. That's why India can be really difficult for some people, because things aren't done like they're done here, and you don't have the same standard of cleanliness. You don't have the. It was so funny. I know I'm getting distracted, but anyway, after being in the process of building a building here and being very mindful of what is code and what is not code, and how things have to be built according to code, you go there. Nothing is built according to, everywhere you walk, it's like everything is frequently, it would just flunk the U.S. building code. Yeah. On the way to the place where I was staying, you have to dodge one wall and you have to dodge the roof of another house so it doesn't, hit you here. And then to get to His Holiness's place, you have to walk through the trash pit, which smells like poo and pee. And, this is just kind of normal. It's just kind of normal. So, yeah, but it was so funny because I've lived in India so long that in one way it doesn't faze me, but just this awareness of it's not up to code. Which I never would have thought because I've never done a building before, but now it's like, oh gee, Jim Marthaler should see this one. Then he'd really see how we're doing a good job. Yeah, really. You should have seen how they were building this one building, with bamboo poles supporting where they're laying the concrete on top, and cut. The dirt is underneath, this loose dirt, and you just put it in these kind of trays and put the tray on your head and walk to the side of the hill and throw it over. Forget bulldozers and anything like that. You just have all this loose dirt all around. And people live, and it's, and people like, I was amazed, because they burn their trash sometimes, the smell of burning plastic. And I looked one place where they were burning their trash, and there's 4 dead trees within, I would say, a meter of it. And nobody's worried about the dead trees catching on fire at all, And it's right in the middle of a whole town, a populated area, could have burnt the whole thing down. Nobody cares. Yeah. And what's amazing is that most of the time things don't happen. Yeah. You would think that there would be disasters right, left, and center, but there are disasters, but they're not nearly as many as you would think that there would be, considering what the situation is. But anyway, you can see the mind like blowing it all up, yeah, and how it's okay. So that's all due to self-centered mind. That's what these things are talking about. Okay, it is you, the self-centered mind. We're talking self-centered mind here. It is you that causes our fear. Similarly, there are some who suffer from fear of bad talk, and some who are upset at being unable to restrain their enemies, and others who are distressed at being unable to support their family and friends. In short, in whatever ways and by whatever means they are tormented, we should realize that selfishness is the source of blame. Okay? So some people suffer from fear of bad talk. Their big preoccupation is, somebody's going to talk bad about me, and what's going to happen to my reputation, or somebody's going to criticize me. And so they navigate their whole life in such a way as to avoid as much criticism and bad talk behind their back as possible, And these things are so instinctual at some level, you know, how we just function. It's like, I'm terrified of this, and so we just go and try as much as we can to rearrange things in the external world so it doesn't happen. And we're not even aware of how terrified we are and how much we're trying to manipulate so that this doesn't happen. Okay, so for some people, their big thing that they worry about is bad talk. Okay, some people are upset about being unable to restrain their enemies. So some people go around and it's like, oh, all these people are out to get me and I have to stop them, and you know, this one's gonna, you know, lie to my boss and get the promotion, and that one is going to do this to me, and that one's going to do that, and I've got to stop my enemies, and you know, Al-Qaeda's going to get me, and this one's going to get me, and that one's going to... And so some people's whole life is structured about restraining their enemies, and they're very upset that they can't do a good enough job about it. Yeah? Okay? Okay, and then there's other people who are distressed at being unable to support their family and friends. So they have a lot of attachment for their family and friends, and then they worry, oh, you know, what's happening to the economy? For sure, I'm going to lose my job, then I'm going to be out on the street, then my marriage is going to dissolve, the kids are going to abandon me, and it's all going to be my fault. And, you know, people will invent this kind of horror story just after reading a newspaper article, you know, and then go around and try and navigate everything in their life to make it so that that doesn't happen. So we each may have our own things that we're particularly sensitive to or afraid of happening, yeah, and the self-centered thought lies behind all those concerns, and then the self-centered thought motivates us to, you know, to do all these games and trips and things to cover ourselves. Yeah? So, but it's hard to see it in ourselves, isn't it? It's much easier when we live in community. We can see how, you know, the other person does it. Yeah? But when they point it out to us, we're like so stupefied. Yeah? We don't see it in ourselves at all. But this is really the benefit of helping each other along the path, is pointing these things out, because otherwise we can be so blind, you know, to what we do every single day. It's amazing. I was reading one thing that was that was saying that there's kind of 4 things that people have. Some people like, you know, their main thing is they like to be liked. You know, their big thing is I need to be liked. And then other people is they really need to be comfortable. And then a third kind of person is they need to be right. Yeah? And then the fourth kind of person is they need to win. Okay? And so I was thinking about that. You know, if you think about it, okay, wanting to be liked, wanting to be comfortable, wanting to be right, wanting to win. So of those 4, which one is the strongest for me? Yeah? Does one of them pop up to you as kind of the strongest for you?
Yes. Liked.
Yeah, to be liked? Okay, how about other people?
Comfortable.
Yeah, your comfort. Yep.
Maybe you should tell us what we are.
How about you?
Oh, right.
Yeah. Okay. Comfortable, yep.
They all sound pretty good.
Yeah.
But maybe definitely comfortable, but also liked. I think they're both pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
50-50 comfortable.
And liked. Uh-huh. Liked.
50-50 liked and right.
Liked and right?
Liked.
Liked. Oh, that's amazing. Huh. Because, you know, how similar we are. Because there are other people who really like, you know, their main thing is like, I've got to be right. Yeah? And if you work with one of those people, oh boy, it's really hard because they have to be right no matter what. Then there's other people that like to win, and they love a good competition. They love a good fight, you know. And if you won't fight with them, they get really upset. Yeah? Isn't it? Yeah? And then they like to win. They, you know, everything for them is a competition. Okay? So I think we all have all four of those within us to some extent or another, but then there might be certain ones that are more prominent. But to look at them and see how that particular one guides what we do. Yeah, and how we do all sorts of numbers and tricks, and you know, like if we like to be liked, then if somebody says even the smallest thing about us, we're instantly defensive, and we have to explain to them our whole thing and why we did this and that, and why, you know, we're okay. You should really like me. I'm right, and I have a good motivation, and I'm a nice person. You know, instantly we just go into that mode of, you know, defensiveness about that. Yeah, and then other people, you know, the moment they're uncomfortable, they fall apart. Yeah, I can't stand any discomfort, you know, make it comfortable again. And then the person who likes to be, you know, so they go about doing the things to be comfortable. And the person who likes to be right, their self-centeredness is right behind that. And if they're wrong, they will find a way to explain what they said that is the opposite of what was right as being the truth and correct, you know? Kind of, they said purple when it's green, and they will find a way to explain why when they said purple, it really meant green, if you point it out to them. Okay? Yeah, and the whole life is centered around being right. And then there's other people, you know, everything's a competition, have to win. Can't cooperate. It's always, you know, me against you, and we got to compete, and I've got to be the winner. Yeah, so the whole life is structured around that. It's fatiguing, isn't it? And the whole thing underlying the whole mess is the self-centered attitude. Yeah. So, you know, maybe we should think a little bit more about these four and how we live our lives, and then have some more discussion about it. I think that could be very, very helpful. Yeah. Or we could do some skits about it. Maybe that would be good. Learn to laugh at ourselves a little bit. Yeah, how funny we are, how we try and, you know, arrange our duckies. Okay. So the conclusion is we should realize that selfishness is the source of blame, you know, so for all these kind of machinations we go through. Geshe Namoa has suggested, when you're chopping your brick tea, okay, because Tibetans have these bricks of tea that are really like hard like bricks. And so if you want to make a cup of tea, you have to, you know, break off some tea, hammer it, and get some tea leaves off. And the tea, it does come in like a brick like that. Okay? So he suggested when you are chopping your brick of tea, saying, come on, down with you, think that you are pounding on the head of your own selfishness. Okay? So maybe we should adopt it to when you're hammering nails, think that you're pounding on the head of your own selfishness. Okay, and Geshe Ben has also advised, I will stand guard at the doorway of my mind with the sharp spear of mindfulness. If he attacks, I will attack. If he relents, I will relent. Okay, so with the spear of mindfulness, we're standing, you know, guard at the doorway, you know, our body, speech, and mind. And if self-centered attitude, you know, kind of comes in some way, then we clobber him. And if self-centered attitude lays back, we lay back. Okay? Also, Langri Tampa said, give profit and victory to sentient beings. Now, this is our verse in the 8 verses of thought training. Okay, why? Because the accumulation of all kinds of goodness arises in reliance upon them. Okay, upon sentient beings. So accumulating all kind of goodness, all kind of merit, we have to do that in relationship to sentient beings. How can you practice the far-reaching attitudes without relying on sentient beings? You know, to practice generosity, you need somebody to give something to. To practice ethical conduct, you need somebody to abstain from harming. To practice patience, you need somebody who's mean to you. To practice joyous effort, yeah, you need somebody to help, you know, give you the virtue, to be joyous about creating the virtue for. To practice concentration, you need sentient beings who are going to help you in your retreat. To practice wisdom, again, you need sentient beings who are going to help you. Okay? So, yeah, all the virtues arise in dependence upon sentient beings, so we give our victory to them. And take loss and defeat upon yourself. Why? Because all harm and suffering comes from holding yourself dear. Okay? So, you know, seeing that all harm and suffering comes from our self-centeredness, then we take loss and loss and harm upon ourself, meaning upon the self-centeredness, and then give the victory to others, because all happiness and goodness comes from others. Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe we'll stop right here and see if you have questions right now. We have a few minutes for questions. Do you have anything? Yeah. What do you do to clobber that thought of self-centeredness? I think it depends on doing a lot of meditation that really sees that the self-centeredness is the cause of suffering. I think that's the main thing, because in the back of our mind we are so convinced that it's the cause of happiness that to just even begin to get around it, we really have to again and again and again see it as the source of suffering. Because if we don't do that, then we try and be Mickey Mouse Bodhisattva, and we intellectually say, oh, you know, that's my self-centeredness, I should bash it. But we don't really believe that our self-centeredness is the cause of our misery. Then we get, you know, our Dharma practice becomes psychologically unhealthy because we start blaming ourselves instead of blaming the self-centeredness. And then we fall into guilt tripping, and, you know, guilt tripping ourselves and all that kind of unhealthy stuff. So that's why I think it, you know, it just comes from again and again really thinking about, you know, watching how the self-centered mind operates and how it causes suffering. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You said that sometimes we know we must do something, but we feel the opposite way. What can we do when do something?
Okay, so we feel like your question is that there's something that's wholesome to do and we feel like we should do it, but we behave in the exact opposite way. Yeah? So what do we do? Well, again, I think it comes through, first of all, noticing these patterns within us and really beginning to see them quite clearly, and then to explore in our mind, you know, what is going on in my mind that I know this behavior is harmful, and yet I do it anyway. And what we usually see is that underneath, knowing it's harmful, there's some strong attachment that thinks it's going to bring us pleasure. And underneath that is the self-centered mind that says, I want pleasure at all costs. So even though one level of our mind says this behavior is harmful, another level of our mind is saying, but it's going to give me immediate pleasure, and immediate pleasure is what it's all about. It's much more important than long-term happiness and long-term peace of mind. Immediate pleasure is the right criteria to judge everything by. That's what the self-centered mind says. Okay? So we have to look again and again in our experience to see how immediate pleasure is not the right criteria by which to judge everything. And that when we do just use, how am I going to get my most immediate pleasure as the criteria, then time and time again in our life we run into difficulty. Okay? Because in seeking the immediate pleasure, we'll harm somebody, or we'll do whatever, we'll create some negativity that will either bring repercussions this life and or repercussions in future lives. Okay? So it's that thing of, I've got to have my fix of immediate pleasure. And that really runs so much of what we do. Don't you think? Yeah? And it's so hard to give that one up, because underneath we really think that this is what is going to be happiness. And if we don't get our immediate pleasure, we are going to be in the pits of hell. That's what the self-centered mind thinks. Now, if I give up this teeny tiny bit of happiness, I am going to suffer extraordinarily. Yeah. Here's one chocolate chip cookie, and it's mine, and if I give it up and offer it to the Buddha, it's just too much suffering for me. That's what the self-centered mind of attachment is saying, isn't it? Yeah. And so just to, step back and look at that. And sometimes it's helpful, if it's too close to home, think that you're looking at somebody else's mind. Yeah, because it's always easier to see it in somebody else who doesn't want to give you their chocolate chip cookie. It's easy to see how their selfishness is making up this story, and they're so attached to immediate pleasure. So sometimes it can be helpful, well, how does my mind look to the eyes of somebody else when I'm hanging on to something like that? Yeah, when I'm hanging on to being right, or I'm hanging on to winning, or I'm hanging on to my pleasure. Yeah, how does my mind look to somebody else? And then sometimes that way it can be easier for us to see how the self-centeredness is operating, and how the attachment is operating. But we've got to really see that and again be convinced that that creates suffering for us, as well as for others. Goodness knows for others. Yeah, how much we've hurt others over our grasping at pleasure. We've hurt ourselves and we've hurt others, haven't we? Yeah, many times. And so to really say, look, this is what it brings, and become very convinced that it's not bringing the happiness we want. Mm-hmm.
Could you elaborate, I don't know exactly how you phrased it, but something to the effect that I was thinking about in the terms of these four aspects that you mentioned, but that the sense that we do expend this incredible amount of energy in our lives to hold up something that we don't even know that we're doing, but that we're just obsessed with, whatever it is, with being comfortable or being liked or whatever it is, and how that runs things. Because I've been thinking about that, and the fact that you mentioned it again, it just seems like it's the place where I feel like, for me personally, that it's so easy to get kind of doped by that and not realize how much energy I'm to maintain whatever. I think of it in the terms of being secure or being in my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Sorry, if you could. Yeah, okay. Oh, so that's interesting wording too, being secure, being in my comfort zone. So according to which one of the four is predominant, or which one is the major one at that particular moment. Yeah,
then I've got to be in my comfort zone. I've got to feel secure. And so we try and arrange the external situation so that what we're holding on to is not threatened in any way. Yeah? And so, like I was saying, and so I'm just thinking of some examples, but you could probably give more. Okay, if our thing is being liked, then if we get the slightest disapproval, then we start our whole thing of explaining how we didn't mean any harm, and we really meant this, and we were doing the right thing, and we're basically saying, hey, I'm a good guy, you know, like me, don't say bad things about me, because I'm going to fall apart. But we go through this whole thing of explaining ourselves, you know, we get quite defensive about it. Or if our thing is to be comfortable, then when we face the prospect of discomfort, then, you know, I mean, we may do all sorts of things, you know, some of us get quite theatrical about it. And it's like, I can't stand this, I'm going to be so uncomfortable, and, you know, I'm going to fall apart, and this just isn't working for me. And, you know, we could make other people feel guilty for making us uncomfortable, you know. Or the same thing with being liked. We might make other people feel guilty for, you know, oh, you said something bad to me, you hurt my feelings, you're a bad person. So we do that to somebody else. Or if our thing is being right, then, like I said, if we said purple, then we will find some way to explain that when we said purple, you know, and somebody points out to us green was the right answer, some way to explain that when we said purple, it actually came down to saying green. You know, so we'll go through all this elaborations and explaining this and that, and then also humiliate the other person for not understanding that purple meant green. Yeah, like, what are you questioning me for? Yeah, well, I mean, you say green, but I already said green already. You know, so what are you questioning that for? Don't you understand that purple means green? You know, so we might humiliate the other person to prove that we're right. Okay? Or if you know, our thing is to win, then everything is, you know, a little bit combative. You know, there's always this flavor of combat in the air, and I've got to be victorious, and so over the slightest little thing, yeah, you know, look at you, and like, you got to turn your eyes away first, or, you know, doing something to kind of win in every situation. So, you know, we just have these automatic behaviors that we're very habituated to, that pop up, that build the fence around us so that we can stay in our comfort zone and feel secure. Yeah? So we build this nice brick fence around us so that we feel secure, locked inside of our comfort zone, where we suffer, don't we? Yeah? So I think, you know what is an interesting thing is to challenge this idea of my comfort zone. Okay? What do I think is my comfort zone? Yeah? What are the dimensions of my comfort zone? How much can I tolerate? And what do I do to keep my comfort zone intact so that nobody can challenge it? So I do all these preventative things so nobody can challenge it. And if somebody challenges it, what do I do to defend it? And look and see what we do. And here I think it's sometimes where helping each other could be very helpful, because, like I said, we don't see when we're doing it, but other people can see it very clear, because if we've challenged their comfort zone, you know, I mean, let's say somebody else challenges my comfort zone, my old behavior comes up. The other person recognizes that I'm defending my comfort zone, but I don't recognize it. So sometimes the other person can be very helpful in telling me, giving me some insight about what I do to block out what I don't like or what I think is going to harm me. Yeah. And then another thing that's interesting to do here is just to imagine like letting that go, and it's like, okay, people don't like me, and I'm okay with it. How does that feel to say, people don't like me and I'm okay? Or how would it feel to say, I'm uncomfortable and that's okay? Or how would it feel to say, I'm wrong and everybody knows it and I'm okay? Or how would it feel to say, I lost? Yeah, I lost. Everybody knows I lost, and I'm okay with losing. Yeah. So to try on really accepting the opposite of, what our comfort zone is. Okay? And often I think, if we imagine that situation happening, we'll realize that it's not going to be nearly as bad as we think it's going to be. It's like, okay, somebody doesn't like me. It's okay. Or my friend thinks that, I did the wrong thing. That's okay. The friendship's still going to endure. I don't have to, kind of prove myself. So it can be very interesting sometimes to let go of the defense and just practice saying to ourselves, I'm okay with it, I'm okay. Yeah. I do that sometimes, like when I have physical sensations that are uncomfortable. I'll watch myself trying to do something to get out of the physical sensation, and nothing changes. And then I say to myself, it's going to be like this. Yeah? It's going to be like, this is going to itch, or this is going to hurt, or whatever it is. It's going to be like this, so better just accept it. And I find when I can say that to myself, then the whole thing gets a lot better. But as long as I'm trying to make the feeling go away, I'm really kind of miserable. Okay.
Interesting that we use one of the other four to defend the one that we're being challenged in as well. So if we're feeling uncomfortable, then we need to feel right about why our comfort is okay. And if we're feeling that we're wrong, then we have to start a competition and win the argument, even though we know we're wrong. So we always pull out one of the other four to defend.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, okay. Here, you get to say that. That's a very good insight.
I was saying that it's interesting that we use one of the other four to defend the one that's being challenged. So if we feel that we're wrong, or being told that we're wrong in a situation, then we look for how to win the argument so that we are right in the situation. Or if we're uncomfortable, then we look for how it is that being comfortable is right in the situation, so on and so forth. So we use one of the other four to justify the one that's being challenged.
Yeah. Okay. So that all boils down to banish the one that's the source of all blame, the self-centered thought.